And I will say thank you very much to the organisers for the invitation to come and speak to you today. I'm also just going to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting this afternoon and pay my respects to their elders past, present and also emerging. So I'm actually from the University of Queensland as well as from QAAFI, which is a rather a mouthful. And today there's a few things that I hope that you'll walk away with because of my presentation. One of those is I'd like you to learn a little bit about yourself in terms of your ability to smell and taste and how all of that works when you come to sensing foods. I also want you to be excited by the opportunity of provenance for Australian food products and the opportunity that we have in the flavour and the distinctive flavours of products that we're able to produce in this very fine country. And lastly, I'd like you to also get excited about the opportunity of using Indigenous plant foods as ingredients and additives in our food and in our diet as a way of adding distinctiveness and distinctive flavours to our products. So what the heck is a flavour and sensory scientist? What do I do all day? Well, I taste stuff. This morning I've been tasting papaya. I've been trying to help the papaya industry identify some new varieties that they'd like to grow that people love. I work with consumers. I also work with panellists, sensory panellists who are specially selected for their ability to smell and taste. And with those groups of people, I look at what people love about food, try and describe it and articulate it using sensory language, and then I take off to the lab and look at the chemistry and also the physics and the structural properties of food to try and understand what it is that's causing those flavours and those sensations that people love. All of these different food products I've tasted over the years and many, many, many more, I can assure you. I did start with humble beginnings in South Australia in the wine industry, and I'm just using this as an example to help you understand flavour in food. In a wine, in a glass of red wine, for example, the components in the wine that make this distinctive aroma properties and flavour properties of that wine make up less than 1% of the entire wine composition. That's tiny, and that's typical of other foods as well. In wine, we know that there are more than 800 different types of volatile aroma compounds that cause the different flavour sensations and aroma sensations that we have in wine. Not all of those are acting at the same time. In any one wine, it's more likely 30, 20 compounds are causing the flavour of the wine, and maybe 4 or 5 are causing a very important, we'd say, key flavour contributors to the wine. And it's really important to understand that because flavour chemistry is incredibly complicated. And the reason for that is because flavour in products comes from a very broad range of different sources. The volatiles that I'm talking about really do distinguish different types of food products. So the difference that causes, that you would see in a mango versus a lemon, that the distinctive flavour that we have between those really is coming from that tiny percentage of volatile flavour compounds. And in natural foods, there is literally a huge range of different types of compounds that are present that we are sensitive to. And some of them are present at concentrations that are so low, it's like putting a teaspoon in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They're that low concentration. They also make up a really broad range of different chemical classes, which makes them very tricky to measure. Interestingly, in natural foods, the volatile compounds that are there, or the flavour that's present in natural foods, can actually be considered sensory cues of health and nutritional value in foods. And the reason for that is because most of the important flavour volatiles or flavour compounds that are present in foods that we are sensitive to as human beings, they're actually breakdown products of essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, or other phytonutrients which we know are really good for human health. So in other words, if something smells good, it probably is good for you. That's in the case of natural foods, of course. So what influences the flavours that are present there, and why does one product for one particular region taste so differently from the same product grown or even the same species grown in another region? And there's a whole range of different things that can impact the types of flavour volatiles that are present, whether it's the genetics, the age of the product, but importantly the environment in which it's grown, the microclimate, even the harvesting method or any post-harvest practices. In the case of cocoa, that's very important. The way that it's dried after it's been harvested really does impact the flavour profile of cocoa and can distinguish cocos that are grown or chocolates that are grown in different parts of the world. And this really does present an opportunity for Australia. The wine industry do very well at this, branding their products by provenance, where it's come from. You know that a Barossa Valley Shiraz will taste differently to a Margaret River Shiraz and differently from a Hunter Valley Shiraz, etc. The reason for that is because of the environment in which it's grown. And that's not only true of wine, but it's true of a whole range of different types of food products. And that's something that I think Australia really needs to hang their hat on. They need to understand what it is that's distinctive about their products and that they can lend that into the provenance story as to where it's come from, why it tastes so much better, and why people should pay more for it, frankly. So just a little touch now on your senses of smell, taste, and I guess that the latest that we know in this area of sensory science. Not only am I involved with products, but I'm also involved with people, and people really vary in terms of their ability to smell and taste. So someone's sensory experience of a product might actually be quite different from yours. When we eat a food product, the visual aspects, the sound, the crunch that it might make, the aroma, as I've just been talking about, the taste, that salt, sweet, bitter, sour and umami, which we detect on our taste buds on our tongue. Trigeminal sensations like heating of chili or cooling of menthol, but also tactile and texture sensations are incredibly important. Add to the complexity is that all of us actually use our mouths in quite different ways. This group, Beckley's group in the States actually identified that there are 4 major types of people in terms of the way that they eat food. You're either a cruncher, a chewer, a smusher or a sucker. Are you a sucker? I'm a cruncher. I like that tactile sensation of using my teeth and crunching food in the mouth. She also identified that there were 2 more subgroups, those who want to get food out of their mouths as fast as humanly possible. Frankly, I think we should call them wolfers or something along those lines. And then also fiddlers, people who like to play with food in their mouth. And the way that people use their mouths to assess food actually changes the way that it tastes, the way that it feels, and their actual appreciation of the product. And we need to keep that in mind as sensory scientists. I'm also very interested in how other oral physiology factors can impact a consumer's sense of taste and smell and their appreciation of products. So we do things like count the number of chews, count the taste buds on the tongue, give people little Teflon strips which they feel on the end of their tongue and work out whether or not they're a super feeler versus a super taster. That's a different thing. And that certainly relates to someone's experience of tactile sensations in the mouth. So I measure all of these things on people and I measure all sorts of exciting things on food and look at how they relate. Saliva is also incredibly important when it comes to food, and our production of saliva has a number of very important roles in general human health, but also in our ability to taste and experience food products. Saliva plays a key role in our ability to swallow food. If you don't make much saliva or you make no saliva, you're actually usually very sick and struggle to swallow food at all. And preparing a synthetic saliva is actually something that's not yet been achieved by scientists. A natural saliva really is this incredible fluid that we produce, which is incredibly unique, but definitely translates the way that we assess and experience food. Now, lastly, I've got a little video to show you in just a moment of a new project that I've been working on, which I'm very excited about. It's a 5-year project funded by the Australian Research Council. It's a training centre. It's got a really long acronym, but I'm not going to... there it is there. I've written it on the slide for you. You can look that up later. We've actually been working for many years, my colleagues and I, specifically Yasmina Saltenbauer, looking at using native foods and ingredients and incorporating those due to their functional properties into mainstream food products to add a point of Australian distinction. And this project really is the culmination of a lot of work that's gone on before and an appreciation for this I guess the potential this area has for so many different agricultural industries and food industries in Australia. I think the video will speak for itself. These are the different native food species that we're looking at. We're looking at a range of herbs and spices which are incredibly exciting. Many of those have very potent anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antimicrobial properties when used in small amounts in a larger food system. There's a number of native fruits which are incredibly high in vitamin C and other nutritional properties. There's nuts we're looking at. We're also looking at native honeys that are made by European bees but using native botanicals, and also some native seaweeds, which is very exciting. So I'll let my video do the talking now to describe what this project's about.
My name is Bruno Dan. I come from the west side of Australia, and I do my bush product from there. There's so much bush stuff out there I wish to share with everyone.
Australian native plant foods have been grown in extremely challenging conditions. The Australian environment is very dry and harsh, and as a consequence, these native plant foods have had to produce a whole lot of amazing phytonutrients, which are excellent for human health, but also have very different and distinctive flavour qualities.
So the type of products that are involved in the project, we have divided them into different groups. So example, the native fruits, we will be looking at kakadu plum, green plum, vertigan plum, and then we look at the native herbs and spices, and then native seeds.
So we're analyzing the food samples, looking for nutrients, vitamins, is there anything special in these native samples. We're also doing studies and actually proving the bioavailability of these compounds in healthy humans.
So what I bring to the training centre is I'm really aiming to bring a chemical engineering perspective to many of the products and processes that are going to be looked at within the uniquely Australian food space, and really that can come from both the processing angle but also the consumer product angle, is when you start to taste and experience foods.
We will be also working on what is known as innovative technologies. So for example, the honey project will look at a patented technology which Australia has created, and that would be a uniquely Australian product.
With the growth of the human population, we're going to run into a protein shortage. Now, there's just not going to be enough red meat to feed everyone, so we've got to start looking at alternatives. Why not indigenous kangaroo and other indigenous meat types? And the idea is to look at how can we add value to these meat products to actually make them part of the Australian experience.
So we're looking for anything where we can say uniquely Australian really does mean that it is impossible for other countries to replicate what we can do here.
And at the same time, we'll be also working on developing a branding and marketing strategy, so trademarks, collective marks for the industry to protect and ensure that what is uniquely Australian remains within the control of uniquely Australian organisations.
My role in the training centre will be to work with the community groups. I'm very interested in how we can work effectively in a real partnership and real collaboration, so how the scientists can work effectively with the Indigenous groups.
The main areas we're focused on will be access and benefit sharing arrangements, which will be used to ensure that the collection and use of the native materials is done in an ethically and sustainable fashion.
Doing what we're trying to do, it's going to create local jobs for local people on country. There's very little development out there on country. So in other words, there's no opportunities to gain employment.
For the enterprise, it's a regional economic development, so it's actually helping the community to be self-sustainable and to rely on their bush food to actually give them some money as well.
Research in a way is a bridge between what we know and how we can use that in a commercial and contemporary context. It gives us the opportunity to look at creating not only subsistence farming but also commercial opportunities, so it can create an income from something that has always been of economic value to us as well as culturally.
Aboriginal people have been researchers for thousands of years through innovation and testing things, so it's innate, I guess, in the way that Aboriginal people are.
Scientifically research, it's very good for us because we know what we're selling. It is healthy and it is that we actually grew up with that same food as well. So it's actually much more better if we do have the scientists backing us up with our fruits as well.
What Bush Tucker means to our community is not only a way of maintaining our responsibilities and our custodial responsibilities to country, but it also means that we are able to continue to enjoy the nutritional benefits of the food that is actually more suited to our biology. It also enables us to pass on cultural knowledge onto the next generation about how we are responsible for those plant species.
Because the bush is so delicate, it's got a lot to offer, a lot to give. Either you can hold it to yourself or you can give it and share it, and it's an awful lot to do, but when you really look at it, it's really worth it.
So if you'd love to hear more about that project or join with us in the research that we're doing and look for new opportunities, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for your attention.